as a computer scientist, when people talk about human rights and AI and everything, I have to be the devil advocate here. I mean, I have to wear another cap. Normally that when I try to promote technology, I'll talk something that really nice, sugary coated things. But today, I have to be fair to all of us here today. And because it's very important to have this kind of a talk, because a computer scientist normally a bit far away from this kind of a human right things. We talk about algorithm, things that automation, but we probably that we do aware, but probably that we couldn't care less about that particular side that actually makes us as a human. So it's very important to ensure that check and balance within the AI research community on itself. So I just try to put this kind of a talk as a pretty provocative, the perils of human rights by having AI around. Role of AI and also implication to our human right, which is totally, I mean, check and balance in a way that might be positive and negative. Yes, I can share the same sentiment as AI can no longer be considered as a future technology. It is already shaping our everyday living, like application that I will share you later a bit. And also that because AI itself, as scientists has developed many years back, they wanted to build machines that mimic our intelligence, even nature's. When we talk about intelligence, doesn't mean it must be from human. It could be from our nature, like swarm of bees, for example, flock of fish, and also that might be ants, how they rearrange and find food. And we try to go back to the some historical journey of AI. I can see that the history of AI begins with antiquity, myths, and also stories and rumors that endow intelligence or of consciousness as a master craftsman here. And the seed of modern AI have been planted by actually philosophers who attempted to describe process, human thinking as the mechanics of manipulation symbols. So actually the AI began from this particular foundation, from philosopher point of view, like René Descartes, for example, Al-Khwarizmi. So they are the earlier people who actually built AI, but there's no term AI yet. And the term of AI came around 1960s, where actually that during the Dartmouth conference, group of researchers joined together and built this kind of AI as a term. And fast forward years later, we have so many AI applications that running and also being a part of our living today. So when we try to see AI, we have to see AI at the two sides. When the first scientists develop AI, they tend to mimic our intelligence through rules. They try to extract how we make decisions from an expert, for example. It's like we have to interview our experts, and also that from there, we try to handcraft the rules and program it on its own. So we call it as a logic-based AI. Yes, people are still doing this kind of research and also development because there are parts that will be taken because maybe there's no data to be used. And this is a more mathematical, philosophical point of view. But after we understood how brain works, this is where what we call the fundamental growth of AI came into. The brain-inspired AI, where we harness no longer about directly from the expert. We are seeing data from our social media, from our structured data, for example, for our Internet of Things, cloud computing, as a source of information that can be translated to knowledge through machine learning algorithm. When I'm saying about machine algorithm, big data, although the terms are probably different in many ways, but we can see that as one cohesive term. So from the brain-inspired AI, it tried to see patterns from data, where logic-based AI, it acquires patterns directly from human through a series of interviewing processes, they call it knowledge citation and so forth. So in the end, by having this intelligence, we are able to predict, to classify, to diagnose, to recognize, to reason, describe, or plan, and so forth. This is the fundamental tenet of AI-based system. So I try to go a bit technical here. So we have many AI technology that has been, I think that matured enough. So looking back 20 years back when I did my undergraduate degree in AI, major in AI, so those concepts are still vague, right? Purely lab-based and also that purely prototypal level. But now we can see that application running seamlessly now. So like say, when you're using Zoom, how they filter noises and select point to show our faces, those actually based on the AI technology here, like machine learning. We have it, agent robotics, planning system, like speech processing. When you try to search something, I'm no longer using keywords, but I'm using voice to search things. If you use Google Home at home, you can control your house, you're having smart home. It's getting cheaper these days. And also that what AI tries to do, actually this, they try to find possible, what we call it, fits within data by trying to minimize error. This is simple linear data. And how about complicated one like this? So they try to, when you see that the two colors, the yellow and also the dark blue or light blue, we can see that two classes existed here. So what AI's algorithm tries to do, it learns from this kind of point of data and try to classify accordingly by having high accuracy, thus minimizing possible error in prediction. And also that AI being used as well to combat COVID-19 per se. You may wonder why scientists capable to build vaccine super fast compared to years back, because we have a cooperation. This is no longer about being a company on its own. It's about the internetwork of researchers around the globe try to solve this problem. And AI algorithm capable to analyze potential, what we call it, when COVID-19 attacks our human cell, they try to bind with our certain protein properties. So AI capable to simulate possible combination of these very fast, and we have supercomputers who can do this. So AI also being used to see the pattern, what happened if we have a restricted movement and also free movement in terms of projecting the curve of the infection. And also AI being used a lot in the drone simulation. Now, like in Malaysia, farmers have been using drones to actually distribute the fertilizer rather than using like hand manual laborious task. So it saves time in many ways. And also that we do have now, if you go to in some restaurant in Malaysia, let's say we call it mamak, you can see a lot of it. The robot, like say, replacing human to simply deliver our food to our table. Yeah, somehow that people play prank with this, try to make robots keyed, but they are smart. They can avoid that such movement as well. And many more. We do have, like say, Netflix as our what we call recommend type of movies suitable to you, and also that our waste systems, our smartwatch, and Google search. When you try to Google search certain keywords, actually that fast algorithm running at the back to match or to recommend certain search behaviors, and many more. You have robot, you have a chatbots like if you're using AirAsia, you have a chatbot system called Ava who will facilitate you. You have some problem that's sometimes counterproductive many ways. So, having said that, AI is a big business as well. I mean that from the economic perspective, AI industry is expected to be worthy roughly around $2 billion by 2035, with global spending in AI system. I think that even last year alone has reached almost $60 billion. So, for example, Netflix alone, the recommendation system itself, powered by AI, of course, is worth $1 billion a year. So you can see that the amount of things that can be generated from this kind of AI. So let me play some devil advocate later. And also that we can see that how actually AI has becoming the disruptive players to not really destroying the things, but change the way we live and also we make decisions. It started with internet AI by having web search, business AI by revamp the supply chain management, educations, and also perception of AI through the implementation of AI in various sectors of IoT, smart homes, cities, and now we have autonomous cars, agriculture, and also robots coming around us now. So it leads a very basic question here. As thinking machine advance, they transform us, our attention, behaviors, and decision belief for either good or ill as well. So organization implementing AI will risk overstepping ill-defined boundaries like to shift the reminder of our lifestyle. So how about the justice system be defined as a convenient or acceptable in many ways, and how technology like this could be really invasive and also exploitative as well. Like if you're talking about a stranger jump into your car years back, we call it as a carjacking, right? But now we call it as a Grab or Uber. So this is how the mind shift of thinking has happening now. So it brought us big questions, but try to bring it back to the human right. We can see that AI could be encroaching on our right to privacy. We have technology around us is they technically monitoring us. I will speak now, my smartwatch listening to my talk might be, and my phone probably that sometime reacted to certain touch that I probably that you press your fingerprint to open it. So we are exposing ourselves to this kind of a unhidden or hidden dangers that maybe we do not know lurking behind at the back. What's the most reason is because big data issues. And as a computer scientist, I can say that big data issues and privacy is quite a paradoxical in nature. It's like an oxymoron, because digital technology is being used not just to monitor or categorize, but actually to influence. Because the thing that when we have a data digitized, it can be monetized or also politicized. This is where the gain and the trade-off play an important role. So because companies want to be relevant as well, they need to use this data. But of course, we as a consumer, we wanted things to be super fast. So in order to improve things, you need to provide them data, but the data might be misused and so forth. So this sort of check and balance between gain and trades are quite vulnerable and important to be taken care of. For example, let's say when big data companies track our behaviors, it can be simply used as a marketing intelligence because they know our behavior, what we have done already. But yes, of course, that marketing effort, both paid and organic, share the same overarching goals, either to increase brand awareness, drive thought leaderships, or generate qualified leads, for example. So this particular metrics can be done by only having data to allow them to make decisions. Imagine that people can view my daily routine like this or our routine like this up to minutes, perhaps seconds, what they can do for this. So they simply can perform this. So yes, I agree that in many ways that having big data alone is not like what we call the only way to lead a better marketing, but the potential is there. So like think of big data as our secret ingredient, your raw materials, your essential elements. Of course, that not knowing how to cook it will be like disastrous, but actually that having that action or ingredient that make all the difference. So by combining big data with the integrated marketing strategy and everything, it can provide consumer engagement or retention or loyalty, and also even to optimize performance and also what we call sales. So this is actually the positive side of what we call it the gain we got it, but the trade-off will be this. So as a result, when we're having data being captured, we may compromise something, let's say sensitive or personal information being used, or sometimes that we receive messages from on our WhatsApp telling something like new sales and everything. This is quite seductive in nature. So like, oh, Shopee, now 11/11, I'll have to buy it. So it knows how to actually that influence you to do things because they know your pattern already. It might be the compromise of the privileged account information like credentials as well. This is why we have scammers actually capable to understand through social engineering the way that we actually communicate with our friends. Scammers, they're very good on that. I mean, from the data that they got, they know already the pattern that actually that can be used to make an imposter, digital imposter that actually acting on their behalf. Or might be that we may expose the confidential of business information as well. So these are what we call the lurking danger or behind possible big data analysis. And what if all this data can be used at the different form, like giving labels to yourself? Sounds like a fictional movie story, but it is not actually, because in China now, they do have this issue called social credit system. It's a form of pervasive surveillance where it ranks citizens and punishes them with throttle internet speeds. For example, they even simply flat ban those deemed not been untrusted or untrustworthy. So individual given a credit score in terms of their behavior. For example, let's say if you're playing loud music and everything, you'll be penalized, and doing something good will be given a reward. So of course, that always been the way that how we want to shape our citizens, but is it the best way to go? So because there's no what we call free lunch theorem, we call it. There's nothing free. So when you're trying to expose yourself in terms of safety, you are actually exposing your data towards someone else as well, or in this case, the big brother. And AI also could be used to technically make another version of you, or we call it deepfakes. So in many ways, deepfake is a technology that actually created by scientists to be implemented in a movie like Star Wars, for example. When we watch movie Star Wars, and some of the actor actresses actually that they have died already, or maybe that they're old already. So how they want to make a younger version of you, like we use what we call it our software on our smartphone, right? We can create different version of you. I just want to share with you that when I had this kind of a reunion with my friends, when I updated everything on Facebook, already be altered their faces and everything, I didn't recognize them in the real world. I was like, is that you? I was like, yes. Okay. So nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with that. But actually that is already created multiple personalities that we wanted us to be. I'm not sure it's a fake, but something that we dreamt of. So, but putting forward of the deepfakes application like this one, imagine that we go beyond, like our prime minister or president of the United States says something, and people believe on that. So it could be weaponized in terms of propagating propaganda, for example, lies or hate speech. Quite, yeah, it could be like using in Star Wars, or to make us happy, having like nice faces, filtered everything. But to the greater sense, it could be used as a weapon as well. And also that AI has technically introduced so-called the discrimination point of view. But we don't blame AI as such, because AI is such a set of algorithms. It's about the data being collected and being trained. When I'm saying train here, it means that the data-driven AI will make decisions based on data being given. So in computer science, we have a concept called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. You provide them wrong data, they will provide you wrong decision. It's just a number crunching application. They don't care whatever the data be fed. So it's upon us to actually to select those particular data. In this case, imagine that the original version of Afro-American Barack Obama, the former US president, now becoming Caucasian. Because the data being trained by this particular model biased toward white male group rather than diverse population. So nothing wrong with algorithm, okay, but it's something to do with the data being trained. And also that we can see that this concept actually can be rooted from the bias or biases in data. Like, for example, let's say the Amazon.com has did develop an application to actually select new I would call employee. But the problem is, because the data based on Amazon before highly biased toward male. So when the new female candidate wanted to apply, it will be rejected immediately. It's not because the bias of the system itself, but the data being trained before. We can imagine that like STEM movement in the other countries where female researchers in the high-tech industry quite imbalanced, quite compared to the male dominance of individuals or group. So when we given data towards male representative, they're saying that female representative might be incapable to do the certain tasks. That actually not so true, right? Not true, because in general ways that they are, the capability are equal, but because the data have been trained, they make the wrong decision. In this case, because of underrepresentative or population. So by having not balanced data being used, like in terms of genders or racial or economic status differences, it may give also the wrong decision to be made. Or might be that the framing concept as well. Let's say that, does our data, do our data wanted to show that our, let's say, consumer credit worthiness, or how they can maximize the loan to be paid by the potential consumer. So different framing using the same data will give different potential results as well. Okay, and if we Google Robert Downey Jr., this is what it will show you in terms of the movies that he played, like Sherlock Holmes, the Avengers, the Endgames, the Iron Man movies, and so forth. Using the same keywords, okay, to search Scarlett Johansson, what do you think the result would be? Is it the same? This will be vanity, bad, lingerie, sexy. So it means that the data it's not been trained in many ways, probably that the way how people search information being used and being trained, and this is how algorithm behind Google understood the pattern when people wanted to know about Scarlett Johansson. Actually, these are the things that might be. So it's quite biased, right? It's really biased in a ways, right? With the same what we call it celebrity who were in the what we call it the Endgames sequels, or also that the Marvel movies. This is how being portrayed as such. Quite scary, right? We're talking about the very fundamental part that this is how it shows already. And also that we go beyond than that. And because the data have been trained in many different, what we call the intensity, their background in terms of their, or we call it the luminance and everything, it also gives the idea that the system is capable to, unable to classify darker female virgin person. So this is what we call the bias in data as well. Because the data been trained very good to actually that classify the gender for fairer skin complexion for both male and female, but fail when it comes to the darker female data set. So these are the things. But scientists also built the, what we call it, the justice data leak to overcome these particular issues at a media like MIT. No worries, scientists are doing this to actually that we also aware this particular part, but probably that the mistake that scientists done before due to data collection per se. And this is the things that we're afraid most when we've been labeled as having a profile, something that we didn't do. Two person, James Ravelli and also Robert Cannons, being identified as different risk, although in many ways, Mr. Ravelli did something hideous crime compared to Cannon. And also the Gregory Lugo and also Mallory Williams being ranked differently in terms of their risk. These are the things that we're afraid most. When profiling coming into this picture, it gives us a different scenarios. And I can still recall that when my friend and I traveled to one of the countries, okay, I can enter that country easily, but my friend has the name Muhammad, have to be subject to interrogations. So I was like, what? So these are the fundamentally, we came from the same countries, technically received, working at the same institution and everything, but we've been technically treated differently. So probably that the profiling, the data and everything has identified certain names, certain keywords that may lead to different profile in nature. And this is the worst part, actually, when the data been trained, they're saying that because probably the data been trained before don't have any representative of disabled individuals within the data. So for us, it's okay, we understood this, but the data didn't understand this. So what happened is, okay, now they see this something like anomaly in nature. So the anomaly can be subjected to something negative. So rather than to grant that particular task or job to a certain person with disabilities based on their merit, simply be neglected because of that. So human did this, and data we provided to the machine can also do the same as well. And also when we deal with the fear mongering, so these are the things that are happening also. The drone technology being used to put surveillance at certain places like Xinjiang, Kabul, and also Palestine and everything. So these are the places that actually that being monitored. Yes, in many ways, they're saying that to provide safety, but do you think that having drones automatically can target certain individuals and everything through our face recognition, do we feel feel safe about it? I don't think so. I mean, like, imagine that I'm at UUM now, Universiti Utara Malaysia, having drones that want to protect me. I don't think so. I do not need that, right? I would rather to have a human to do the we call it checking mechanism rather than the machines, because the accuracy might be high, but also they also have some tendency to make mistake, because technology not subjected to the what we call it we can negotiate, right? We can negotiate the things, and we have humanity aspect, but technology does not have those things. It's either that yes or no, shoot the target or not. So these are quite dangerous. For example, like what happened on August 29 last year, the New York Times visual investigation has shown that a drone strike in Kabul actually killed 10 civilians, including an 8 worker and also children. So who's going to be blamed for this? Is it the AI system or human operating that at the back, or instruction to send this in the first place? So these are the particular questions need to be raised as well. So autonomous weapons system, in many ways, we put it at the, there's nothing nice about war anyway, but it actually to reduce the local troops or soldiers casualty. It's an autonomous system things, but it also brings bad things to other what we call the counterpart effect as well. So these are the things that AI scientists are actually trying to get into the picture, the point of singularity in technology. So we believe there's certain part of time where AI algorithm will surpass our human intelligence. I mean, yeah, we have different opinion about it. We may have different opinion about this, but you can imagine that our intelligence per se, based on the size of our brain that resided at the cranial system, our brain structure, and also that that we can actually our speed of the processing the information in our brain are far limited compared to the computer can do. For example, let's say we capable to process information running from our, let's say, our skin to our brain up to 700 kilometers per hour. It's like the speed of jumbo jet. But computer system capable to process the same information at the light speed. Right? So these are the things that are different already. And imagine that the memory can be stored in the computer system could be the size of a building compared to our biological cranial system in our brain. So those are the things that we can imagine that. Also, that there are scientists also disagree with this, but my point of view, we may reach this particular point as well. So we try to put it in the context of that fits all ages concept. Like if you approach our parents and ask them gently, of course, about the time before we were born, at least, do they dare to think that everybody will post or share the images on the Facebook? I don't think so, right? Or even that receive answers to every question from the mysterious entity called Google and trust the results. Or perhaps that ask something where to go on the road. So those are the things that didn't exist, but now we have it, that one. It's augmented our thinking abilities to help us. So again, singularity itself is a hypothetical future point that where technology growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. It's a no turning point. And also that we can't see much on this particular part, changes on our future human civilization. It might be that's dystopian or utopian nature. I have no answer for that. So that particular part, it means that we are reaching the level of super intelligence or having a gap. Now we have a digital gap. Those who are with internet or without internet. But in the future, those with AI or without AI as well. Yeah, the future getting scarier now these days, right? But we can say the AI for good also play important role to help to combat poverty, climate change, and everything. I mean, I try to be fair on this particular judgment. So let me bring these particular scenarios. For example, let's say now we have a machine intelligence or machine learning parts where it was established in 1950s, and until now, we are actually experiencing what we call artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. We haven't get there yet to the full flesh of intelligence per se. And it is expected within our reach, less than 20 years, we may reach the idea of AGIs, or artificial general intelligence, or in this case, we have a full machine intelligence within this particular range of 236 or 260s. And fast forward in the future, we may reach the artificial super intelligence, which is machine consciousness has been reached in many ways. But again, machine consciousness and everything is something that hypothetical in nature, because we also do not know how conscious being formed philosophically in particular ways. However, this particular projection has been based by the survey conducted by Mueller and Bostrom in last 3 years, when they interviewed more than roughly 550 AI experts worldwide to see this particular phenomena, either that will happen or not. Bear in mind that none of them agree with this particular projection. Some of them say that there's no such a thing as well, but majority think that it may happen by having this particular range. So, and how to do this? Actually, that we need to have it like, of course, that we need AI to automate some parts, but how about rather than to fully automate everything, we put us in the loop. Like, system can do this, but human must be in charge. So it's always been that it's either automation versus augmentation. Augmentation means that we play essential role to make decision. AI will be our sidekicks to provide a decision rather than to fully automate process. But there's some part can be automated as well. Those might be dirty, dangerous. A job could be fully automated, where we do not to compensate our human fellow life in many ways. Or we need to redefine AI values, or what actually AI should achieve. It also goes back to the idea of optimization. For example, let's say the Midas touch, we call it a myth. King Midas wanted to turn everything to gold. Yes, the god, there's the god that time granted his wish. But what happened was he even turned his daughter into gold as well. So this is kind of an optimization problem. So how about we need to reevaluate rather than to do this, but with certain criteria should be met first. This is where ethical values, rights should be play important role to become a constraint. Like, I tried to put a hypothetical concept further. Let's say I wanted to build a machine with AI system that capable to crunch complex numbers, the biggest number ever, infinite numbers. So it means that the computer system need more power. Having said that, human actually a battery, right? If you watch movie, The Matrix, actually that human actually source of energy to the computer system called matrix. So should we allowing that particular part to be taken care of or not? We need to put that into that particular perspective. Because optimization means they want to reach something, but how to get there? If you watch a movie called Bedazzled years back, it also an issues of this particular values. Of course, that's not in AI perspective, but how we make wish, like genie in the bottle things, right? Making wrong wishes, there you go, you got the wrong things be granted. And also we need to know that payoff and progress in many ways that, of course, that we wanted to move further, we need to control something. We cannot get things in the same time. So we need to optimize a particular part. And I believe this is very important. The last one is transparency when it comes to decision. Imagine this. Today we have algorithm that only capable to recognize things. Like say, if you're given a cat photos, it says that it is a cat. But now scientists develop an algorithm that capable to explain why it is a cat. Rather than to simply say that this is a cat, like yes or no decision, it's capable to explain the way how it got there. So the current state of the art of the machine learning algorithm, particularly the good ones, they are purely black box in model. Black box mean we don't know how it makes decision. It just voila, come up with yes or no, 0 or 1, something, but how to get there, we do not know. It's quite mysterious in many ways, but scientists develop explainable AI to do this. It means that if the system capable to recognize it is a cat, they actually that will give some criteria or simple criterion saying that, oh, actually that is a cat. So fair enough to the humanities in many ways. And also that we need to have AI design perspective that privacy will be the fundamental goal there, or privacy by design, where we can have data minimization rather than to collect all data altogether. How about we just collect things that we wanted to monitor? And many ways, or de-identification where we can make it anonymous. Yes, the data become anonymous now in many ways when we collected the data, but the anonymity could be unseen or be seen by the data algorithm, analysis algorithm. Like we can put it this way. We wrote something on let's say to send letters to our friends and everything, but our friends know already, oh, this is Azizi, regardless how you try to change your handwriting structures and everything, because they have ideas already about you. Even you didn't say the name, or there's no print at all about you, because the pattern can be trained on its own. For example, the classical example that we can say, a teenager was classified as a pregnant due to when she bought certain pills. It's just a pill, right? But with the different frequencies and also timing in between, so the system capable to recognize that the person actually might be pregnant, rather than she knows that she's pregnant. So those are the things that, because the small things that AI can be used to find bigger pattern out of it. Or you create synthetic data, compile the nature data to provide matching and to classify things accordingly, or might be restricted to access. So these are the things that data and so forth you can create. Or we can create AI with compassion, because now we have this particular working behavior, repetitive to creative. We may have this, put compassion as a one of the axis, and then we can have this. So you have AI can work with us closely. So before I end up the question here, sorry, my presentation today, AI is like how Einstein developed EMC square that can be turned into atomic bomb. So we can't undo the things already, but we need to rebuild the ship by having these questions that how to build a system that can augment us rather than eliminate us, or perhaps that how we put component of spirituality into the AI-based technology, and perhaps compassion in humanity while building AI system. I think that's all from my perspective on the human right and how AI actually could be perils towards our rights.
So today our topic is how technology affects our human rights. And I will focus on whether and how our legal right work can protect our employment and jobs from automation and AI. I believe you will probably agree that many of our jobs are threatened by AI and automation, especially given that we have just learned a lot from the previous presentation as to how powerful and disruptive AI is. By nature, AI and automation are developed to replicate the way humans think and function, so they can do the same of what we can do, and can even do better than us in terms of cost and efficiency. It affects not just labor-intensive work, but also highly trained occupations like medical doctors. So humans are competing with machines. I'm sure you have come across news reports as to how automation is going to replace our jobs, like losing millions of jobs by 2030. The speed of replacement is predicted to be faster than people learning new employable skills. In the third industrial revolution, we created digital technologies like computers to supplement human input. But now we are facing the fourth industrial revolution. Technologies no longer aim to supplement our work, but are there to replace human input. Remember, AI even has the potential of machine self-learning, mimicking how humans learn, so many of our work will inevitably be affected. Our work is not just about supporting our livelihood, but it is also important to other legal rights. For example, the European Court of Human Rights has held that our working lives are essential to our right to develop social relationships. So, the next issue is, do we have legal protection for our right to work? And my short answer is yes. The right to work is expressly recognized as a fundamental human right by various international legal provisions. It can be found in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, otherwise known as the ICESCR. The covenant is a binding international law obligation and a legal goal for states to progressively realize, and it has been ratified by many countries, both in Asia and globally. Article 6 of the covenant recognizes the right to work, which includes the right of everyone to the opportunity to gain their living by work. And under Article 6.2, governments have to take steps to safeguard this right and seek to achieve full and productive employment. Now, Article 6 is short and simple, and the right sounds wonderful. But what does it mean to have a right under international law? International law obligations are not necessarily applicable to all countries, as not all of them have ratified the same covenant. Even so, there are other international provisions providing for the same right, such as the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration and the European Social Charter. You can see from the slide that the European Social Charter spells out the commitment to achieve an employment level that is as high as possible. So I would say the right has a very strong global reach and legal standing. But some countries do not allow domestic enforcement of international law. But domestic courts, like the ones in Japan and Hong Kong, usually respect the high standing of international law and will interpret local laws in a compatible manner. So the international legal right has an explanatory or interpretative influence on local laws and policies. Today, we will mainly focus on Article 6 of the International Covenant. And I think the most appropriate way to see the right is that it is an obligation for states to progressively realize for the sake of sustainable development in socio-economic terms. Article 16 of the International Covenant seeks to ensure governments will uphold the right. Governments have to submit periodic reports to the United Nations Committee on the measures which they have adopted, and also the progress made in achieving the observance of the rights. The UN Reviewing Committee will monitor the implementation and compliance, and it will also publish their evaluations and observations for international public scrutiny. We can see that some governments are already paying close attention to the potential impact of the AI revolution. For instance, the Swiss government reported in 2018 that they concluded there was no need to take action at that stage. That subtle remark is a signal that the Swiss government has carefully evaluated the situation and was aware of the need to take steps in the future in order to tackle the implications of the fourth industrial revolution. So how will the right operate in practice? We would definitely hope that our jobs are saved. But the reality is, competition in business and international trade is extremely fierce. Companies need to adopt AI and automation to lower costs and improve efficiency. Let me give you an example. The American airline industry could save $15 billion each year if it reduces the number of commercial flight pilots from 2 to 1. If it uses full automation, it could save the whole sector $35 billion US. Corporations would obviously want to secure this cost-cutting advantage. But at the same time, it means permanently cutting the jobs of pilots. From the economic policy perspective, governments would want to increase productivity and thereby improve their economy. For example, there is now the global trend of smart city transformation. Singapore has already been undergoing trials of using autonomous vehicles. And this is their plan to improve the economy by having a more efficient transportation system. But this also means eliminating the jobs of drivers. So this involves a complex balance between saving jobs on the one hand and promoting economic development on the other hand. The right to work is, unfortunately, I would say, not an absolute guarantee for our jobs. The UN General Comment number 18 is the official explanation of the rights issued by the UN Committee. And we can find two legal grounds for not keeping our jobs. First, the UN comment makes the important distinction between a government's unwillingness and inability to protect the right to work of the replaced individuals. As I've said, it might be impossible to keep the automatable jobs given the tough competition in the business world. If we stop or slow down the deployment of AI and automation, companies could become less competitive. In turn, this could lead to even more job losses and affect the right to work of even more people. In addition to that, it is crucial to remember that a lot of other human rights, like the right to education and the right to health, are also dependent on the performance of the economy. The UN General Comment also says retrogressive steps against the right to work can be taken by the states if they are duly justified by the totality of the rights involved. As well as that, the wording of Article 6.2 highlights that policies have to ensure steady economic and social development. So it's not just about our individual right to work, but it's also about our collective rights. The interests of the whole economy and whole society can override a person's right to work. Now, the next issue is, has our right to work been rendered worthless by this modern age of disruptive technology? The answer is a firm no. And the governments cannot take a laissez-faire approach. Instead, the government is legally obliged to guide us through the fourth industrial revolution, bearing in mind that, first and foremost, Article 6 requires governments to take steps to safeguard our right to work. As well as that, the UN comment expects government to implement plans to counter unemployment. And the European Social Charter requires governments to achieve an employment level that's as high and as stable as possible. When developing policies and plans to counter unemployment, the right to work has to be properly balanced with other competing rights. So what are the competing rights? Article 15.2 of the International Covenant provides for the competing right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress and its application. Naturally, consumers like us would want to benefit from new and exciting technologies like autonomous vehicles and AI doctors. And Article 15.4 also requires governments to respect the freedom for scientific research. This is further supported by other rights, such as the freedom of thought and innovation. And the deployment of technologies involves an exercise of the freedom of expression and ideas. But on the other hand, the right to work is essential to the realization of other fundamental human rights. For example, we need to work in order to fully enjoy our right to private life and right to family. So I would say the rivalry between the right to work and the right to apply disruptive technologies are equally compelling. Ultimately, it really depends on the economic and social circumstances of the country in question. But I think the real focus is not on how they should be balanced, which itself is an extremely difficult exercise with no definite answer. Instead, it is more important to take the right into account as a mandatory legal consideration when formulating policies. So, for example, if a government's policy blueprint simply says how the planned AI, automation, and technologies are going to enhance the GDP, but the policy plan mentions nothing about the jobs eliminated, and there is no plan to counter the loss of employment, I think that would be an indication of the government wrongly ignoring the right work. In my opinion, there are two other things that the government must do as required by their international law obligations. The government must provide training and guidance, and also a compensation fund. And I will elaborate the measures in turn. Now, in relation to the provision of vocational training, training is expressly required by the right to work, pursuant to Article 6.2 of the Covenant. On top of that, training is also required by other human rights. For example, the right to education is settled in Article 16 of the International Covenant, and it says, education shall enable all persons to participate effectively in a free society. This is why it is crucial to train and get people back to work as part of their social participation. But I think it's equally important for the governments to pay attention to the type of training provided. For example, the right to work is not upheld in a meaningful way if our public education system compels students to learn outdated skills. It is important to note that Article 6.2 does not simply require vocational training, but it also requires vocational guidance. The government should guide their own people to choose and develop skills that are less automatable. And as to what kind of skills are desirable, well, it really depends on the domestic context. But personally, I believe that digital literacy is the #1 essential skill. I'm not saying that we must learn highly specialized skills like data analytics or program coding, but digital literacy could more generally refers to the ability, openness, and confidence to use new technologies for enhancing the value of a human input. Just like the previous presentation says, it's not just about automation, but augmentation. On top of that, having an adaptable mindset is equally important. By using the word guidance in Article 6, my opinion is that the governments need to mentally prepare the people for the fast-changing future. It can, for example, be done by warning the people that the career lifespans of many professions are shortening, and citizens have to take early actions in response, like trying to acquire a new skill periodically. At the very least, the government should take measures to promote a culture where people are open to new technologies. The term technophobia refers to the fear or reluctance to learn and use new technologies. And as we can see from the research on the slides, technophobia happens not just to senior people, but also to many young students. This is why the government should never take a laissez-faire approach. However, the provision of training and guidance alone does not adequately satisfy the legal requirement of the right to work. Training can take time and can be impractical for some people. It therefore has to be supplemented with a compensation fund for the loss of employment. From the legal perspective, the UN comment requires the establishment of a compensation mechanism in the event of loss of employment. There will be certain groups of people who are completely replaced by technologies, and they may be facing difficulties which prevent them from acquiring new skills for reasons like age, social inequality, and lack of accessibility. After all, it is often difficult and expensive to acquire skills that are not automatable. The provision of training cannot recoup the permanent loss of the right. If those groups of people are only harmed by technologies, but are not benefiting at all, in that sense, their right to enjoy the benefit of scientific advancement under Article 15 of the International Covenant is also undermined. But then we have the question of whether the right to work would legally require the provision of a universal basic income. UBI basically means the government distributes the money earned by technologies to everyone. Essentially, it is the ultimate idea of robots working and winning bread for humans. And the budget would come from having a new robot tax or an AI tax. There's an interesting real-life example that can be used for analogy. In the state of Alaska in the US, every resident will receive an annual dividend from the Alaska Permanent Fund, which derives its revenue from oil. And it is exactly on that comparable basis. There is an ongoing academic and political debate on the feasibility of having an UBI. But my opinion is the legal requirement to set up a loss of employment fund does not mean we have to introduce an UBI, even if there are mass redundancies or permanent loss of jobs. Well, this is because conceptually, a UBI is different from a compensation fund in terms of the underlying legal rationales. From what I know, the idea of UBI is that everyone will receive a basic income irrespective of whether they have a job or not. So it is not conditional on unemployment. And on that basis, UBI potentially involves a number of other human rights and policy considerations that are completely unrelated to the right to work. For example, UBI involves the right to social security when the policy seeks to tackle poverty. And UBI can also concern the right to enjoy the benefits of scientific advancement when it's about fairness in terms of redistributing the fruits of AI and automation. But of course, the right to work plays a role when the policy aims to address loss of employment. So in my opinion, the right to work itself alone does not necessarily require the provision of an UBI. In any event, having an UBI is not an easy task for the government. The income earned from technologies must be large enough to distribute dividends for everyone. At least the example of the Alaskan Oil Fund has a sufficiently large revenue. So UBI may work in the US where the big tech companies with huge profits are located, but may not be possible for other countries. It is also important to note that the right to work was created around 60 years ago when the International Covenant was introduced. So if we want the right to work to become the legal basis for UBI, it would have to be recast in terms of its purpose and meaning when there is extensive permanent loss of employment in the future. For example, like the previous presentation says, when there is artificial super intelligence. Okay, so although the right to work is unable to save all jobs, there are still 4 important things to bear in mind for the future. First, it remains crucial to raise awareness of the right to work because it imposes vital obligations on the governments to provide training and compensation. Given the disruptive and unprecedented nature of the 4th Industrial Revolution, the right becomes increasingly relevant, and to many people, is the only available legal right to protect their livelihoods. until the day when each of us receive a UBI finally arrives, I would imagine that the right to work will stay pertinent as we still have to work and compete with machines. I think it's equally important to emphasize that having only a compensation fund for the loss of employment is not enough. Governments should not have the wrong idea that they can buy out the right. Having a fund is, without doubt, a practical alternative for the right, but it is not a sufficient substitute. After all, the gist of the right to work is about obtaining employment, which is why other measures like training or policies to create more jobs are still necessary. Remember that the European Court of Human Rights have ruled that our working lives involve other human rights, such as the right to develop social relationships. On top of that, there are many other human rights that are dependent on work, like the right to form a family. Even more importantly, work is part of human dignity. It forms our social identity, and it helps many people find their life purposes. So there is no real substitute for work, and the government still need to try their best to achieve an employment level that is as high as possible. For this reason, we need to urge the UN Reviewing Committee to more closely scrutinize what governments have done for the right in the periodic reports. In addition to that, there's also an underexplored issue, which is the transnational impact to the right. Let me put it this way. When a technology invented in country A is applied in country B, it's the people of country B who has to take the impact of loss of employment, even though the technology was created by country A. So there are new issues for future research and investigation as to who should take the larger responsibility for the transnational consequences. And that brings us to the final issue, which is the role and responsibility of corporations. Companies are the ones who deploy technologies. Given the intense market competition, it is understandable that they may not be able to safeguard the jobs. But that being said, they are the ones who benefit most from the deployment of AI and automation, and also the ones who directly cut the jobs. So it's natural that the society would want to expect them to bear part of the responsibility for upholding the right to work. The UN Guiding Principles for Business and Human Rights, although it's not binding, it still suggests and guides companies that businesses should avoid causing or contributing to adverse human rights impacts through their own activities, and they should address such impacts when they occur. In my opinion, corporations should contribute to the training and retraining of the staff as part of their corporate social responsibility. But after all, corporations are driven by market forces and regulations. It is therefore essential for governments to take the lead to promote a culture of corporate social responsibility and work with corporations to help people realize the right to work as fully as possible. And I think that's it for today. Thank you.
They are, for example, the Data Protection Act is one of the things that we can acknowledge first, because in generic term, government need to set up these particular acts. Because from a company point of view, it depends on how they want to utilize your data. So they are, but what I mean by data privacy by design is how the system be deployed or developed to conceal information from probably that can be seen from to others. Some acts is simply can cover up what we call the higher level of information, but when data analytics play roles, they can discern more hidden patterns, something that beyond our eyes or beyond things that we can see, like the one that I did mention about how the teenagers has been predicted as pregnant when she bought certain medications. So this is how, I mean, it is not about the data protection per se, but how that information could be shared by others and so forth. It's double-edged sword. It's quite difficult to simply do it 100%, like data, synthetic data as well. I mean, there's some percentage that you can allow that particular data to have certain, what we call it, synthetic information being injected, because too much, it gives you totally wrong pattern to be established. But nothing, it means they show exactly how our data will be seen. So from my experience, this particular process actually been designed to the software engineers based on the company's what we call rules. Yeah, but in general term, we have the Data Protection Act to safeguard the first layer of defense in order to make sure that the data cannot be breached. That I also argue this with my students. I mean that, of course, we encourage them to use like Quillbots as one of the methods to improve their writings, but they need to know that, to be honest, those accuracy not really high, because the current state of AI, right? Currently, they are unable to understand semantic or contextual information. They simply like replace the meaning as it is, but not really semantic at this moment. But we do not know that the new algorithm capable to do that as such. But I'm saying that the disruptive part will be that we educators need to guide them how to use it. Like let them learn. When they did this, how they can learn from this particular pattern, the things that have been changed by Quillbot application, for example, or Grammarly. So rather than to rely the information being given as such and trust the software 100%, because if we did that, we actually blindly believe the decision being made by the system. This is actually the human parts that we need to play important role to make the right balance. Like, for example, like this, we can allow some mistake to happen for us to learn. Like when we have a kid, we allow them to tie their shoelace, right? For how long that we need to do it for their behalf, for example. So at some point, we need to teach them how to do it correctly, so they will do it on their own. Similarly, things also for the application like this as well. I think that I believe that we cannot simply deny it. We need the application system, Grammarly, Quillbots. It helps us to make a better essay or articles, but we need to know also that what is happening inside, right? So when they change it, so at least that we can learn rather than from human, now from machine itself. I think that one of the what we call it a fair solution that we can integrate when we allowing students to do as such as well. I mean, they need to, yeah, again, they need to know that the problem is, like, say, when my student use Quillbot and Grammarly, they produce good articles, but when it comes to the real things like presenting their work and everything, we can see huge gap on that, right? It's like, okay, wait a minute. I mean, your writing are superb, but what happened when you try to present it accordingly? So yes, there will be that check and balance between that.
You are certainly right that there are other international provisions that safeguard the right to work, and also other human rights that are involved in the fourth industrial revolution. And for example, like I've said, the ASEAN Human Rights Declarations safeguard a number of rights that are relevant. And for regions which do not rely on hard law, but soft law instead, I would say that the international law obligations still has a hermeneutic legal force that forces or influences the local courts to interpret laws and policies in a way that is compatible with the international law. Because after all, domestic judges would find it very difficult to criticize the international law, to criticize its standing. So I would say that even though there may not be a solid statute safeguarding the right to work, the courts are still influenced in some ways, and the governments also have to respect the international law obligations given the international public scrutiny, as I've mentioned. I sure understand that a lot of people, especially consumers, like new technologies, using autonomous vehicles and using AI doctors. But the governments, even though the jobs cannot be saved, the government still need to guide people to learn skills that are not automatable. So I think the focus is really on the government's obligations in policy terms. Even though there will inevitably be hard choices, like we said, that maybe some employers prefer to spend money on robots instead of hiring people. But nevertheless, the government can still offer financial support to train their citizens and to provide training so that they can smooth the changing process from automation to humans working and harnessing automation and AI. The process is going to be very tough and rocky, but the government has to try the best and cannot adopt a laissez-faire approach. This is what I would argue.
I mean, that question is legit actually in many ways, because currently that AI scientists try to see that machine ethics is one of the roles. For example, let's say we give it true scenarios. Like say you are in a car that autonomous car like Tesla, for example. Now you have 3 scenarios. If you go straight, you will hit the let's say the bunker or boulder or lorries. Sheer to the right, you will hit a pregnant lady and kill her. Sheer to the left, you will kill kids or elders. So what decision that car should make? That's ethical point of view. It's like a pulling trolley problem, something. So that particular issue still might be hampered, that how AI system could be designed to put as such autonomous car. Let's say we don't want to buy a car that ethnically will kill us and give mercy to others, right? I don't think so. I don't think so. You're right. But again, it becomes like merciless to have that thought as well. So always check and balance the particular part. But when it comes to the point of how safe your cars and also with autonomous system, and we are driving on our own, because AI-based car autonomous system, they are able to compute to the millisecond in terms of accuracy. So yes, the data might be not good enough to be trained at this moment, but in the future, I can say that it's much safer to travel on the autonomous car compared to human. Because car with themselves, they can communicate, then estimate distance. Like when you're using cars with many sensors, it provides you sort of detailed information how you can park your car accordingly compared to the manual ones. So this is what I'm seeing in the future. We do aware that actually that when once the flight take off, everything be controlled autonomously. Nobody like touch. They monitor that one, but being driven by autopilot mode actually when they on the cruising mode. Human only take charge to descend and also to take off. Other than that, will be controlled by autopilot mode. So actually, that all this while we are flying by technically AI-driven things in the air, but we did not know it, right? But we feel safe, right? That is about rather than to have it like fully automated system, we should augment. So rather than to allow AI to make decisions 100% for us, we can also have human in the loop to control that. This is what AI community try to advocate now. So some work that really dangerous, dirty, whatever it is, the 3D's work, we can replace them like to bring robotic explorer to the Mars, for example. The place really hostile and dangerous. We let robot to go there, not us. But to do something that related to us, compassionate or fast decision, probably that human must play important role. We still need that, right?